Well, hello, Katie. Welcome back.
Yes, thanks for having me on again. This is such an honor.
I know. And I'm so excited about our topic that we're going to be talking about because I love to read. I love books. I loved reading to the kids. But before we get into all of that, um, before we get started, for the moms who haven't listened to our first conversation, which I don't know who hasn't because it's the number one downloaded episode of Coffee with Carrie, can you just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, about your family, and about your homeschooling?
Yeah, so I'm Katie Klein, and I'm a homeschool mom from Minnesota. I have three kids, and our first official year of homeschooling was when my son was in kindergarten of the fall of 2020. So we kind of came in with this wave of new to homeschooling moms. There's a lot of people joining the homeschool bandwagon that year, and it feels fun to be a part of kind of that cohort of moms. But now we've been officially homeschooling for, what is it, going on 6 years. Is that right? I don't know. It feels like it's all blurring. The years kind of pass. But yeah, I run a small business called Little House Learning Co., where I write curriculum and blog and just share about our homeschool life.
Thank you. So fun. I love your different curriculums that you have. I know we're way past Christmas, but I love your Signs of the Savior. That one's just
Yeah.
awesome. And I love the Hems and Habit. I mean, what a great
Yeah.
idea to put those two together. But anyway, okay, I digress. I want to get into our topic today, but first of all, just curious, how many books did you read in 2025?
So I've been keeping track each year since I think 2020. So this is my sixth year of keeping track. I read the most books I've ever read. I read 210 books this year, which
Wow.
I attribute to getting a Kindle. My husband bought me one for my birthday, and it opened this whole other world of reading to me. So it was really fun to see the numbers. Like I just kept changing my goal as I got close. I was like, oh, let's just do like another 10 more. And I think I changed it, probably 15 times. But a lot of reading this year.
200 and what?
10. 210.
Wow. So Kindle was your kind of helped you a little bit more. Mine this year was Audible. And
Okay.
the main reason is because I've been getting a lot of migraines this past year, and
Mm,
reading print has just been really hard for me. So
yeah.
I've just been like downloading Audible, and wow, the
Yes.
number of things I've been able to actually read, and I've been able to expand the genres of what I read as well. But anyway, we'll get into all that. But I just wanted to like get your number, 210. Okay,
Yeah.
so moms, we're going to talk about how you too can be Katie. All right. So I love seeing your posts on Instagram about all the different books that you're reading, and I'm
Mhm.
always amazed how you find time. All right. So before we get into how you do it, let's talk a little bit about why. So as homeschooling moms, we're already super busy. So
Yeah.
why should we make reading a priority, and why is it an important like personal habit to keep, to make and to keep? Because I know we know how important it is to read aloud to our kids, but we
Yes.
often forget, no, we should be doing this too. So why is it important?
I think that with homeschooling, sometimes it can make your world a little bit small. You
Mm,
have a lot of responsibilities within your home. And for us, too, a lot of the circles we run in are connections through our homeschool co op or through our church. And for me, I felt like I needed something that would expand my perspective outside of just the Christian homeschool motherhood world. So, one of the things that reading opens up for me is a whole other avenue of diverse perspectives, differing worldviews, especially opposing worldviews, that maybe I'm not rubbing shoulders with necessarily in my everyday life, but it opens up so much more of that, not just from history, but even from current reads, some of the more academic reads, some of the current memoirs, things like that, it expands my, I think, just world in a sense. So I definitely don't always like read things I agree with, but I think that that's like a healthy exercise to read and process through and like weave the gospel through what you believe when you're presented with a counter narrative. And then also for me, I just felt at one point that no matter what, no matter how many kids you have, like if you're a homeschool mom, like you're on a time clock. Homeschooling ends for all of us. And I just felt like, what is going to be left? because homeschooling takes up so much of my brain thought and my time and energy that I really want to prioritize, even now in the thick of it, in these years where I'm going to be spending the most time with my kids ever. Like if you look at statistics, the most time you spend with your kids is like the age that I am right now. But I want there to be something like left when my kids are gone, when I'm done homeschooling. And so just the concept of enriching my mind and having a mother's education where I'm doing for myself what I would do for my children has really been a powerful perspective like shift for me. And really it's become this habit over the last 6 years that has been incredibly life-giving, with so many beautiful ideas and thoughts that I've encountered that I never would have if I wasn't reading.
I love that because it's really kind of the same reasons that we want to read aloud to our kids is
Yeah.
so, because I used to tell my kids, there are going to be friends you're going to make in these books and people you're going to meet in these books that you may never actually have a chance to meet, and cultures you can, explore, and countries you can visit that maybe in your adult life you may never get to these places, right? Or to meet these cultures or be immersed in them. And so I never thought of it like from that perspective, like for us as well. And it's always so interesting to read books from a different worldview.
Yes.
Because I mean, when you think about it, how do you share what you believe and what's important in the gospel when you're never around people who share an opposing view? It's kind of hard to kind of see where they are and why they think the way they do, so that you can approach the topic in a way that is beneficial. So
yeah. And whether you're online or whether you're in person, I think it's just so easy for us to fill our community and like the voices we're listening to with like as an echo chamber where we're just putting our ideas out in the world and hearing them bounce back. And so reading really helps us, I think, just see a little bit more nuance and understanding, have compassion for other people, and really see things from different points of view, different cultures. I mean, there's so much benefit to reading for moms too.
All right, so awesome reasons why we should do it. We all totally understand and agree. It's kind of hard to find the time, but here you are, 210 books. So what's your secret? How do you find so much time to read so much? So like, okay, I'm sure you have tons, but can you like give us 5 or 6 like go-to tips that you do?
Yeah, so I can remember it was like December of 2019. I was sitting at my parents' house in those kind of obscure days in between Christmas and New Year's. And a friend of mine had shared that she had read 100 books, and she has kids my age. And I was like, how could you read that many? And she was the one who really encouraged me, like, you can do this too. So I hope moms hear, like, from me, you could do this too. And my best advice is, one, find the time that really works best for you. So when I first started, I had little tiny children. My oldest wasn't even in kindergarten yet. I think there were 4, 2, and like a baby. And that's not really providing a lot of time to read. So audiobooks was a huge thing for me. They were really helpful to just get my foot in the door of getting back into that habit of reading. I had read a lot, like in college, and then I realized that my brain was just being fed little snippets, almost like a tweet size. And I just couldn't focus on even like reading a full article because my brain had shifted so much into what was popular and just that kind of clickbaity content. And so that's when I was like, I really want to do this for myself. So audiobooks was helpful in just getting back into that rhythm. And I know a lot of people don't like audiobooks. And what I say to them is, are you listening with headphones? Because that makes a huge difference. For me personally, I cannot really listen if I just have it on my phone or a tablet or something playing with the kids in the background. That does not work for me. So the first thing I did was I got a big pair of like headphones. So when I have them on, my kids know I'm listening to something, just tap me on the shoulder to get my attention. And then I started finding pockets of time to listen. So primarily like when I was doing the dishes at night, as I was like kind of closing down our kitchen, or if I was folding laundry, I would listen, because that would always take me, especially at that time, like an hour to fold all of our family's laundry and those little tiny kids' clothes and tiny socks, you know. And then I got a little speaker for my shower, and I would listen as I was showering or getting ready, because that was one of the only times in the day I didn't have my kids around me as much. And then now, one of my favorite times to listen to audiobooks, and where I really get a lot of time, is kind of in that hour before bed. I like to like lay in bed and just take some time to rest. So I'll even have the lights off and just listen, or sometimes I'll read it on my Kindle if the light's not too bright, you know, disturbing my husband. And so I feel like whether it's with a Kindle or, you know, audiobook, I think people are quick to shoot that down and be like, oh, that doesn't count as reading. That counts, it counts. And there's a lot of books that I couldn't get through if I was reading a paperback. But if I was listening to it, it felt like, oh, this is just like a TED Talk, or you're sitting and we're having this conversation, rather than this heavy academic read. It felt much more digestible for me, especially as I was just beginning to read. And then some other pieces of advice I would say is always have more than one book going. Charlotte Mason is someone who said, you know, to have 3 books going besides the Bible, having a stiff book that's like kind of heavy and academic, having an easy novel, and then having an easy moderate book, and then having a novel. And I used to just read, you pick up a book and you read the whole thing and then you're done. And you go to read it some days and like, oh, I don't really feel like reading, you know, this book on parenting or this book on Christian living. And then that would just really stall my progress. But when I had multiple books going at once, and now I do it where I have multiple formats going. I have an audiobook, like I have lots of hardcover paperback books, and then I have a Kindle book going. I can really just say, okay, I have 20 minutes here and there. What do I feel fit for? What can I pick up and feel fit for? So I think it's just finding where that really fits in your life, and then starting, you know, to not be overwhelmed with, I have to have 3 hours to sit and read. You know, that's how I also used to read before I had children. But really, 10 or 15 minutes a day just adds up. And if you have a book that's kind of always with you, or something that's within reach, you know, keeping a book by the chair you sit in when you're nursing, or keeping a book in your backpack or your purse, then you can just pick it up. You can read a couple pages and you can put it down. Even just plodding through a book like that, you can get through many books a year, you know. So it doesn't have to always feel like a huge chore. And then I think also not finishing. If you don't finish a book, that's okay too. You don't have to always like plod through it. If you're like, oh, I don't like this book, but I'm 30% of the way through. It's okay to not finish.
I love how you mentioned, or you reminded us about Charlotte Mason and having the 3 books going at one time, because that makes me feel a little bit better, because I found, and I had mentioned earlier, that I've been doing a whole lot more Audible just because of my migraines, and it's hard to just, you know, focus on a page and the light and all that kind of stuff. But I find that when I'm reading for pleasure and it's a novel and it's a story, it's easier for me. I love to listen to it on Audible. But if it's a heavy book, or it's a how-to book, or it's a philosophy book, like a homeschooling book, or, you know, a religious theology kind of book, I like to have that in paperback, because I'm a note taker. You know, I like to dog ear pages and underline and things like that. So yeah, really cool. And I think it was you, I'm pretty sure you did this several times. You did some things on Instagram where you were giving the suggestion, you know, just start with the books on your own shelf. Like,
Totally.
what books have on your shelf that you never actually read? Right?
Yes.
Or those books on your shelf that it's been years since you read them, and you know you love it, but you don't really remember why.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
just attacking your bookshelves.
Yes. Typically, I take time to, hang on, sorry. My phone is on Do Not Disturb, but my husband just texted, so I'm like, oh, shoot, it's going to go off. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so typically every single year, I will plan a specific challenge for myself, and that's just been a fun way too to engage with reading. So one of my first years, I recognized the fact that I had never read, you know, the Chronicles of Narnia. I had never read Harry Potter. I had never read Anne of Green Gables. All of these books that homeschool moms were telling me, this is super classic. You need to be reading these books. well, I went to public school and I read what was in my library. I just didn't know, I was never exposed to that kind of reading. And I felt like I really missed out on a lot of that. And so my challenge one year was, I'm just going to read through all of these series. And that was so life-giving. And then, yes, last year or the year before, I had a challenge to read down your bookshelf, kind of like you eat down your pantry. What can you read that is just sitting there? I always feel like that's a little hanging over my head, like, oh, I spent money on this book. I really want to read it. But then maybe there's other low-hanging fruit, like audio or whatever. So that was very fun. That actually opened my eyes and my ears, I guess, to a lot more young adult or even like elementary school books that I had missed. That was really fun, where there's a lot of classics in that category too that I had never read and that were recommended for me to give my children. So I had them on my bookshelf because somebody had recommended them, but then I'd never read them at all. And so that was super fun. And those are quick and easy reads. If you're listening on audio, like that takes maybe 3 hours, 4 hours to listen
3 to 4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I remember Sarah McKenzie, one of her pieces of advice or her words of encouragement. There were some moms who were, they were really stressing out that their kids were going to be graduating and they hadn't read so many of the classics that they wanted to get to. And she was like, you know what? But don't worry about it, because some of these, the true classics, the ones that have timeless themes, sometimes they're better read as an adult, because the themes and the heart of it and the character development really hit you differently and more meaningful as an adult, because you've lived different experiences and you can look back on it and you go, oh, that coming of age story, that was beautiful, because you have this hindsight to it. So it's fun as an adult to go back and, like you said, read a lot of those classics. They're classics for a reason, as an adult for the first time. So yeah,
for sure.
Great advice. Okay, so I've been getting a lot of questions from moms and requests about, well, what are some books to read? So first, let's talk a little bit about some of your favorite nonfiction, parenting, faith formation, or homeschool books that you have read, and which ones you really like the most or you would recommend.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite categories to read because it's most relevant to my life. And I feel like when I pick up one of these books, it's like a little shot in the arm. So I love reading kind of what's out there. I feel like I've read a lot of homeschooling books, but the ones that I keep coming back to, or maybe even some of my most recent books have been, well, you mentioned Sarah McKenzie, her book, Teaching from Rest. That is one I pick up probably once a year or once every other year. It's only like 70 pages or 80 pages, something I can tuck in my bag and bring to the beach, and I feel like that one really helps me refocus on just setting my intentions for the year. One I read this last year that I absolutely loved is called Come On Home by Jessica Smart. I think it just came out maybe in 2025. And it was such a good blend of parenting from like the biblical gospel-centered perspective, but also really practical. And I loved just that mix of, kind of, this is setting the vision of what you want for your family, but then also some really tangible, practical pieces of how to make that vision happen. I love Rembrandt is in the Wind by Russ Ramsey. He also wrote Van Gogh Has a Broken Heart. Those two books really changed the way I view art, especially as we're engaging with art and art study in our homeschooling. And then The Nature of Rest by Erin Lynham. She does the Nat Theo podcast as well. Okay, yes, you have it right there. Our co-op is having a retreat, and we're actually going to go through some of the chapters because it was very practical of just setting the tone for why is rest important? Why did God set rest as a rhythm for all of his creatures? We see that in nature so much, and how does that apply to our lives? And then setting a vision for how you can rest, and how you can incorporate some of those rhythms into your daily life. I loved that book. And then, I think I love especially memoirs, faith memoirs, whether it's, again, somebody who is coming from my own faith tradition or faith perspective or not. I love hearing just how that unfolds for a lot of people. I grew up in a Christian family and going to church. I have a lot of friends who have deconstructed from that faith. And so I have read a lot of memoirs just about that, trying to really understand where they're coming from and what their experience in the church was like, and kind of untangling their faith. And that's one of my favorite nonfiction genres in general, just memoirs about all kinds of things.
I love that. So I I've been reading because I haven't really been a huge memoir kind of a that never really was like a genre that I really liked. But I think it was Greta Estridge. She had posted on Instagram like a bunch of chef memoirs.
Oh, fun.
And I thought, oh, I love to cook and I
Yeah.
love to read. I think I'm going to try and read some of these. And so she really got me into reading a bunch of like chef memoirs, which sounds kind of weird, but it's
Yes.
really fun to read about because a lot of them are also, believers. Um, just how food and serving other people and using that gift of hospitality, formed their relationships and their lives and stuff like that. So I've been reading a lot of those kind of memoirs, but and so okay, so another great one that I read this year, I think everybody's reading it, is The Anxious Generation.
Yes.
Right. Such a good book. But on that note, it's not a new book. I think it came out like 2 years ago by Aaron Lochner called The Opt-Out Family. How to
Yes, I
give
read
your
that as
kid,
well.
yes, how to give your kids what technology can't. And the reason why I love that one is because Erin doesn't really harp on why screen times are bad. She starts with the premise of we all know social media and the algorithm and all that we all know that we're doing more of it than we should.
Hmm.
This is how you can opt out and do it practically. And she lives that lifestyle. So that makes it even more,
Yeah.
meaningful and practical. Another one that just came out last year that I absolutely love, it's by Amber O'Neill. What is it called? Homegrown.
Yep.
And I love how it's a collection of essays of homeschooling moms and dads and grandparents in all walks of life. And they're just describing their homeschooling experience. And so I thought that was very helpful in that homeschooling genre. I'm so old. I'm dating myself. But there was a book like this that came out a long time ago called Patchwork Education, and it was the same idea. And it was just essays of homeschooling parents who were explaining how they homeschool. But I love how Amber did this now in 2025, and it's more modern because homeschooling is so different
Yeah.
than, than what it used to be. And this one's older, but I quote it a lot in my new book coming up, but it's called The Enchanted Hour by
Yes.
William Fox. So if you ever have any, really, is reading aloud really that important or reading at all? Yeah, and read The Enchanted Hour. You will start doing all the things you're telling us that we can do so that we can develop this habit with our
Yeah.
kids and with ourselves.
I've read at least 6 or 7 books about reading aloud and its benefits, and that one was my favorite for sure. It's a
Mhm.
great book.
It really is. I did that one on Audible, and it
Okay.
was so good that I was like, nope, I'm getting the hard copy so I could sit there and highlight it and do all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so those are some of our favorite like nonfiction type books that you've read. Now let's talk about reading the kind of fictional story books. So what are some of your favorite genres, some of your favorite books, some of your favorite authors?
So my oldest is in 5th grade. He's going to be in junior high next year. So this last year, and even I think here in 2026, I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to read some of the more current books that are out there for kind of that, I don't want to say young adult, but that middle school age.
Hmm.
Because I don't, I personally don't trust like what is out there necessarily to be quality and to be these really good moving stories. So I want to at least have a whole list of classic books, yes, but in maybe books that I read, but also books that are coming out. So
Hmm.
some of the ones I've read recently that I really have loved, the book Echo Mountain and the book Sweep. I read that last year and it was definitely in my top 5 books. I loved that book so much. And A Place to Hang the Moon. So those are 3 that I've really enjoyed kind of in that middle grade genre. But I also, there's a lot of fun series out there, especially for boys with my oldest, that are coming out that are very adventuresome. And those I'm trying to read too, so that as he's reading them, I can read them alongside. And kind of enjoy the experience with him as he's becoming an independent reader, so I'm missing out on some of those read alouds. That's been really fun fiction. Some of the authors I go back to, Jean Stratton Porter. I love her books, especially The Girl of the Limberlost and Freckles. Those are really fun. I love Little Women. I try to read that every year. Persuasion and Jane Austen, that's my favorite Jane Austen, but I will from time to time pick up, Pride and Prejudice or Emma. Some of those are favorites that I've returned to. And then this last year, I read a series called the Emma M. Lyon series. Have you read this yet?
No.
Okay. They're set in like the late 1800s, and the girl, it's about her journals, and the character is she's very likable. She has a great sense of humor. It's kind of about this quirky town and situation she finds herself in, and she references a ton of books like Shakespeare and Plutarch and stuff. So if you're a homeschool mom and you're understanding the references she's laying down, I feel like it adds another dimension of richness. But it's kind of about her friendship with these 3 men. The 4 of them end up being in this kind of friendship group. And it's a really likable series. I would say the first book was a little bit slow, but as you get into the series, it just gets more and more fun. And they're one of the series I bought. So if you know me, I love to listen to a lot of free books, but then also I thrift. So for me to go out and buy a book is like a pretty big deal. So I've asked for each book progressively. Like I got the 8th book for Christmas, the 7th book for my birthday, so it's been fun to collect the whole series. And then I've loaned them out to all my friends. Okay, you read this and who's got this copy, because it's just a really good series.
And then what was the name of it again, and who was the author?
So it's Emma M. Lyon. So like Emma, and then her M is her middle name. And it's by Beth. I want to say Beth Brower is her name.
Okay.
That sounds about right. Beth B. Let's go with that. But I think her last name's Brower.
Okay, because I'll make sure I put that in the email that I send out, because I try to list all the different resources that people mention on the episode. Okay, so I'm excited you're going to be doing a lot of young adult reading. So let's kind of go into the children's books now. So what are some of your family's favorite read alouds that you've done with your kids, like all the way through, whether younger, middle school?
Okay, so I asked my kids, well, what would you say have been some of the favorite read alouds that we've read together as a family, or that they've listened to on audio? We have a Yodel player, which we have a lot of, audiobooks that way. So even at their young ages, they're able to listen to audiobooks independently. Some of our favorites that we're making our way through would be the Little House series. We've gone and seen some of the Little House locations that are, in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then one in DeSmet. And then last year we were in Missouri too. So that's been fun to kind of have that whole world really brought to life by going to places on our family vacation. The Mallory Tower series by Enid Blyton. These came out in the 1940s, but my kids love them. They're like a schoolgirl, boarding school kind of coming of age series. So all the girls are very misbehaving and mischievous at the beginning, and then at the end, they really kind of grow into themselves. Little Pilgrim's Progress has been great. There's an illustrated one, I think, by Joe. Do you know Joe Sutton? I want to say is his name, but it's by Helen Taylor. That book is beautiful. Each of my kids have read that one in 2nd grade, having it read aloud to them, and that's just been a highlight, I think, for all of them in their schooling. The Betsy Tacy series, takes place in a fictional town called Deep Valley, but it's actually based on a town in Minnesota. So we've been to see the Betsy Tacy houses, and like we've read just book 1 through 4. After that, she kind of grows into junior high, high school, and post college. But I've read the whole series, and that's really fun. And then my kids said a lot of books we've done with our book club. When you read a book in a group of families, I feel like the depth of richness that you get out of it just changes so much. We read a book, at our home, and then we do like a party to celebrate, and
Mhm.
that's super fun. So we've done The Hobbit, we're doing Gone Away Lake, Children of Noisy Village, some of those books that have just been really fun to read in a group of kids.
And doing a book club with friends keeps you accountable too.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so if you're trying to get into the habit of reading aloud, definitely start a book club with your friends because knowing you have to have it finished by a certain date so that your kids can discuss it really helps you stay accountable and start that habit.
And it's so great too because when you're getting together, like I'm not the person who's going to put together a unit type study where it's like, here's the
Mhm.
food that goes with it, here's the activity,
Mhm.
here's the game. That's just a ton of work. But when you're with a group of like 8 or 9 families,
Right.
or even 3 or 4 families, we've done at different iterations where they've had lots of families or little less families. It's great because then you just bring one activity and then your kids get to experience the whole, celebration. And that is really special too, to be like, oh, I don't have to do everything all myself and just to experience that in community. And then also your kids have this shared like story experience with a bunch of other kids. Where they're like, when they reference something in a story, all these other kids are like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Mhm.
about. I remember that. So it's a really special way to read as well.
It really is. And I loved all of your suggestions. Some of them I haven't read, so I'm gonna have to go pick those up. But I think because I asked my kids too, I said, okay, so I'm gonna be talking with Katie about this. What are the 5 books that like pop
Mhm.
into your brain? And I was kind of surprised. But one of them was The Five Children and It by
Yes.
yes, by Edith Nesbit. It's such an old classic, but it's so fun and it's such a quirky book.
Yes.
So yeah, Five Children and It, and then Phantom Toll Booth. My kids
Yes.
absolutely love that one. Peter and the Starcatcher
Oh, I haven't read
by
that.
Dave Barry. And I think because my kids did musical theater and my daughter really enjoyed Peter Pan, the series, that this is kind of
Hmm.
like the prequel to it. And so it's really
Oh,
interesting to get to just kind of imagine how Peter Pan came to be the child that never grows up and where Wendy comes from and how Captain Hook or why he is the way he is. So Peter and the Starcatcher, that's a really good one. My son absolutely loved Holes. That was
yes.
his favorite books, and my daughter really loved the False Prince series by
Okay.
Jennifer Nielsen. So she loved that one. And then one that came out after them that I just read on my own after we were already finished homeschooling. It's called Adventures with Waffles by Maria
Okay, fun.
Farr. Love that one. She is such a fun, quirky little girl. It's
Yeah.
just a fun, fun book. It's kind of like Because of Winn-Dixie.
Mm.
But the issues in the book aren't as deep and
Mm.
heart-wrenching as some of the issues that come up in Because of Winn-Dixie. But anyway, and then you can't go wrong with the classics like Black Beauty and what were some of the other ones that they said? Oh, Little Princess, Secret Garden, Treasure Island. You can't go wrong with those. I mean, they're classics for a reason, right?
Right.
All right. I can't believe we ran out of time. So before you leave me, can you share with the moms how they can connect with you on Instagram? Tell them about your website, your new podcast, how they can get these fabulous resources that you create.
Yes. So you can find me online pretty much anywhere at Little House Learning Co. So my blog is littlehouselearningco.com. My Instagram handle is Little House Learning Co. I share there pretty frequently. And then, yes, I'm a part of a roundtable podcast called the Honest Homeschool Podcast. And that's brand new. And we've been having a great time. It's myself and 6 other gals that kind of rotate in and out and talk about just all kinds of topics that relate to homeschooling from a lot of different perspectives. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, it's been fun to listen to it and watch. So, moms, if you haven't checked that one out, make sure you do and you follow so you can listen every time because I know you've been on a little hiatus, and so I can't wait until you guys come back on with your new episodes.
Me too.
All right, so I'd love to end with this question. What words of encouragement can you give to moms who want to develop this personal reading habit for themselves, but they're already feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, my best advice is to start small. Even if you put a little notice on your phone, or something that pings you every day, or some sort of way that you're setting the intention that I want to read or listen to something for 10 minutes, or like my goal is to read 2 pages every single day, or my goal is to listen for 10 minutes every single day. Really, it's a small habit that really builds a life. And so if you can just start small and then build on that habit, I think that moms are always surprised by how much a little bit of reading every day can go a long way. Honestly, whether that's even just in the car, if you know you're going to be in like a pickup line or a waiting line, or I have moms where they keep a little book that they want to be reading in the car when their spouse is driving, if they're going anywhere as a family or on your way to church or anything. Like, honestly, just a little bit here and there adds up a ton.
Thank you, Katie. I so enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait for the moms to hear it, and can't wait to have you back on again.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been great.